So it's all been kicking off in the Beckham family recently. The so-called perfect family that they present themselves as seems to be a complete facade put on by David and Victoria Beckham. At least that's what their eldest son, Brooklyn Beckham, has told everyone recently on social media. There was obviously a ton of accusations against his parents that he posted on Instagram, which I will cover in a moment. There's been rumours of a fallout for a while, but I never understood why people really cared that much about that or speculated about it. But after Brooklyn came out with some of the stuff that he's come out with on his story on Instagram, this has even caught my attention, and I'm not really proud for caring about it this much, but it's starting to get a bit crazy now. Considering I am British and I grew up with David Beckham being an icon of the country and his wife Victoria obviously being very famous as well. This is obviously quite an eye-catching story. So I am going to start with what Brooklyn put on his Instagram. I'm going to kind of comment from there on each point that he made. His parents have actually responded as well, which is another level of bad. But we'll start with what Brooklyn said and then we'll go from there. So I've been silent for years and made every attempt to keep these matters private. Unfortunately, my parents and their team have continued to go to the press, leaving me with no choice but to speak for myself and tell the truth about some of the lies that have been printed. Now, there has been a lot that's been said about David and Victoria kind of controlling the press for decades now. That was always a thing that was talked about and how they always try to present as the perfect couple and in the perfect family. So that kind of ties into what Brooklyn is saying here. Obviously, he's grown up in all of this chaotic lifestyle that they've created. As a child, he was never protected from the media. He was always put out there as a child. A lot of people have been calling him a bit of a spoiled brat going against his parents who gave him everything. Well, he's obviously got a lot of reasons to kind of go against them and not want to be associated with them anymore. And as he says here, I do not want to reconcile with my family. I'm not being controlled. I'm standing up for myself for the first time in my life. In my entire life, my parents have controlled narratives in the press about our family, which I just mentioned. The performative social media posts, family events, and inauthentic relationships have been a fixture of the life that I was born into. Recently, I have seen with my own eyes the lengths that they will go to place countless lies in the media, mostly at the expense of innocent people to preserve their own facade. But I believe the truth always comes out. That doesn't sound great. If they're putting innocent people under the bus to preserve their own image, that's not a good look. My parents have been endlessly trying to ruin my relationship since before my wedding, and it hasn't stopped. My mom cancelled making Nicola's dress in the 11th hour despite how excited she was to wear the design. My parents repeatedly pressured and attempted to bribe me into signing away the rights to my name, which have affected me, my wife, and our future children. My days. Okay, so if people don't know what this means, essentially, even though Beckham is his surname, it's also a brand. It's a really valuable brand. Obviously, something that's been built up by his parents, but they asked him to sign away his name. So essentially, what that means is he can't profit off of the Beckham name by creating products, for example, using that name without their permission. So essentially, they want to control him. And I'm going to assume that how it affects the wedding is potentially the Beckham name going to his wife, who, as you're going to see in these notes, his parents clearly don't like, and I don't think she likes them either. So I don't know if that's the case where they didn't want the name transferring over to his wife as well. And also, even outside of her, their future grandchildren, who are obviously going to be raised by Brooklyn and his wife as well. But either way, again, you're just putting your business, your brand over your child there. It's a really weird thing to request. Don't get me wrong, I understand protecting your brand and your name and things, but not from your child. I mean, come on. There's also some stuff here about how her mom called him evil because he invited his nans who were without their husbands on the table at their wedding, which again is a bit of a weird thing to get annoyed at, but okay. The night before our wedding, members of my family told me that Nicola was not blood and not family. What does that first part mean? Not blood. This isn't like the 1800s royal family. What do you mean, not blood? I have questions about that, but also not family. What a lovely thing to say. I mean, the day before his wedding, I think 99.999% of the time, if you tell someone who's about to get married that they shouldn't, they're not going to change their mind. If they're in love enough to get married, then you're probably not going to change their mind. You're just going to cause issues. But why the day before the wedding? What is wrong with you? Since the moment I started standing up for myself with my family, I've received endless attacks from my parents, both privately and publicly, that were sent to the press on their orders. Even my brothers were sent to attack me on social media before they ultimately blocked me out of nowhere this last summer. So again, when you're seeing all these stories come out about how he's gone against his parents and things like that, where are those stories coming from? Victoria and David Beckham, again, they're very close to the media. So the fact that this has creeped out and it is in the public eye kind of doesn't bode well for them, in my opinion. But again, without his side of the story, he's always going to look bad. And so people are still calling him a spoilt brat after all of these statements that he's making. The one thing that you need to say is, with obviously how powerful the Beckhams are, and obviously there's going to be a lot of witnesses to some of the stories he's telling, especially this next one. If he was lying, he would get sued 1 million%. So there must be some sort of weight in these stories. My mom hijacked my first dance with my wife, which has been planned weeks in advance for a romantic love song in front of 500 wedding guests. Mark Anthony called me to the stage where the schedule was planned for my romantic dance with my wife, but instead my mom was waiting to dance with me instead. She danced very inappropriately on me in front of people. I've never felt more uncomfortable or humiliated in my life. Okay, so this is the main talking point that people are kind of memeing on, to be honest. The fact that he mentioned there's 500 people there, I don't know if it was deliberate, but could he be lying? 500 witnesses? Like, he would get sued for this story being fake, or there would be people coming out against it, which I haven't heard yet. It's weird. It's really weird. Like, look, I can't comment on the dancing because none of us know what he's deeming as inappropriate, but it doesn't sound great. But look, even just to go away from that, but first off, hijacking the first dance is wild to me. Everybody and their dog knows that a first dance is between the husband and wife. Why is Victoria Beckham getting involved in that? That's just majorly just wanting to make everything about you, which again, the more that you read these stories, it's clear that she just wants to be the center of attention. She wants to be in control of everything. For me, I don't even think it's like I want to have this moment with my son. It's probably just something to try and wind the wife up and trying to ruin like a moment between them because you hate the relationship. It's just petty. It's just ridiculous. And again, dancing on him is an important detail, not with him. Dancing on him and him being really uncomfortable and embarrassed. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what that means. There's obviously a lot of memes on Twitter at the moment as to what her dance moves could be. Maybe she whipped out some of the old Spice Girls dance moves. I don't know. But yeah, that is obviously not a great look for her. My wife has been constantly disrespected by my family no matter how hard we've tried to come together as one. My mom repeatedly tried to invite women from my past into our lives and clearly intended to make us both uncomfortable. Again, why? That's just weird behaviour. Just comes across really vindictive, to be honest with you. And then he tried to talk about how they tried to travel to his dad's birthday to try to celebrate with him, but they were basically rejected, told that he could go, but without the wife. And if they went to the public party that they're having with hundreds of people and with the press there as well, like what are you playing at? Like again, it just seems to be like you need to come to this party because there's going to be loads of people who are going to see it, and there's going to be media there, so they can take photos. We can put loads of Instagram posts together, look like a happy family, and act like we're not actually fighting. You don't care about your relationship with your son. Why don't you just say, oh, we'll just meet behind closed doors, just the four of us, and try and sort things out, or just at least celebrate your dad's birthday? Like, what are you playing at? And it goes into like the whole brand side. So like my family values public promotion endorsements above anything else. Brand Beckham comes first. Family love is decided on how much you post on social media or how quickly you drop everything to post a family app photo. So again, we're talking about like the whole big brand, and there's so much more to life than just how you're perceived in the media and how you're perceived in the public eye. It just seems from the start like that seems to be the obsession. I think more on Victoria's side, not to say that I know their relationship inside and out, but David Beckham was obviously a footballer and he mainly became the more flashy celebrity after he met her, and they kind of became like this famous couple. Victoria was famous in her own way when she was part of the Spice Girls, but let's be real, without David Beckham, she'd have just disappeared like the rest of the Spice Girls. Like, it's just weird. It's just weird to me. Like, she wants to portray that everything is perfect in a relationship and family. Yeah, I've not seen this woman smile in like 20 years. Like, please, can someone get me a photo of her smiling? The photo doesn't exist. And finally, he just put across that the narrative that my wife controls me is completely backwards. I have been controlled by my parents my entire life. I grew up with an overwhelming anxiety for the first time in my life. Since stepping away from my family, that anxiety has disappeared, which is damning. And I mean, there's no proof for that, of course, but I can imagine as a child being grown up and just having cameras flashing in your face continuously. You're obviously going to grow up probably worrying about how you look. Parents are probably telling you how to dress all the time because you need to look good. The one defense I am seeing for like the parents over Brooklyn is the fact that they're saying, well, they gave him everything. They gave him all this money. He grew up this perfect life and all this sort of thing. But money don't make you happy at the end of the day. Look, we'd all love the kind of money that Brooklyn Beckham has. And even if they have apparently cut him off now from the money, he's obviously way richer than pretty much all of us, anyone that's watching this video, myself included. I wish I had Brooklyn's money. But money isn't everything. And honestly, how many children who are famous from a young age don't end up with some sort of like problems? Like, it's really rare. So for me, to be famous parents and to not really protecting your children from that, at least until they're an adult and they can decide for themselves whether they want to go into the public eye or not. That's just really irresponsible, in my opinion. This is the issue with like families like this. Because of the wealth and power that they have, they're just so used to getting yeses from people. So when they do have a disagreement between them, on both sides, they aren't used to not getting what they want. And that comes across from Brooklyn as well. I'm sure that he isn't 100% perfect in this scenario. And his wife, who, by the way, is part of a billionaire family as well. So, I mean, we're just talking about riches of riches here. I don't think that any of these people are probably the greatest people on earth, to be honest with you. But I do think the lesser of the two evils here is probably Brooklyn. I think his parents aren't coming across very well. And you can see this in their responses, which I'm going to talk about now. So David Beckham has since responded to the Brooklyn thing, which David Beckham did decide to respond publicly, which he didn't really need to get involved in this. This statement, this response is ridiculous that he's put out. So I've always spoken about social media and the power of social media for the good and for the bad. The bad we've talked about is what kids can access these days. It can be dangerous. What I found personally, especially with my kids as well, use it for the right reasons. Okay. I've been able to use my platform and my following for UNICEF, and it has been my biggest tool to make people aware of what's going on around the world for children. That's good, but who asked? What's this got to do with Brooklyn? You work for UNICEF. Oh, God. Okay. Let's continue. And I've tried to do the same with my children to educate them. They make mistakes, but children are allowed to make mistakes. That is how they learn. That is what I try to teach my children. You have to let them make those mistakes as well. Oh God. What? I mean, you couldn't write it, could you? Like, you've literally not. If you're going to respond to the statement or try to like come across like we're in the right, you've just not addressed anything or made anyone believe that any of these accusations are incorrect. The fact that you bring up your charity work in the middle of a response like that, which it was never even mentioned. Brooklyn never even mentioned like, oh, my parents they have all this money, but they don't do any charity or anything like that. And then David comes back and says, well, I work with UNICEF. I do all this. Then I get that, but nobody asked. Nobody asked about UNICEF. That to me is just classic. Like, oh, I use my platforms for all the good. Look at all the good things that I'm doing. Not like my piece of shit son, this little inconsiderate asshole here, who he just uses it to slander my name, slander a charity man's name. Like everyone hates him. Everyone hates him because I'm the good guy. And also being like, oh, kids will make mistakes. You know, I try to teach them the goods of social media, but they're going to make mistakes. Just like in Brooklyn, just classic, like changing the subject to make yourself look better. And I think that this actually supports what Brooklyn's saying. Oh, and then there was the other story that Victoria Beckham is apparently on the floor, like devastated because of the statement from Brooklyn. She's on the floor. I don't know whether she's flailing her arms around because she's so mortified of her son going against her like this, or maybe they mean like she's on the floor breakdancing. Maybe that's what she was doing at the wedding, you know, doing some sweet breakdancing moves like that Australian lady did in the Olympics. I don't know, but again, that's not a genuine reaction, is it? Nobody just lies on the floor like upset. Do you think a journalist has gone round to be like, okay, let's see what Victoria Beckham's doing? They open the door to the house and she's just on the floor like, like Brooklyn. Like it's just not real. Like they've gone and tried to get something out of it, and she's just like in David Brent style, just been like, just put the I'm on the floor. Nothing else, just I'm on the floor. They'll get the public on my side. There are people saying like he needs to appreciate what he has. Like, you know, they gave him money. They've given him so much money in their life. At the end of the day, that does not make good parents. You don't get me wrong, it helps. We would all like a bit of extra money and not have the stresses of having to, you know, work long hours on minimum wage just to put bread on the table. But you've got to draw a line somewhere. Like, just because someone gives you money doesn't mean that they're a good person. You know, is Diddy a good father because his kids are rich? No, obviously not. Now, talking of which, you know, he's been photographed with David Beckham, which I don't want to read too much into that, but actually, I do want to actually point out like how big, how big the Beckhams are. So apparently, his goal is to become like the first billionaire British athlete, I think it is, or something like that. Which, when you have goals to be a billionaire, when there's a realistic chance that you could be a billionaire, this is just a personal theory from me. I don't believe that you can be that rich without being a dick in some way. Like, you've got to tread on someone's toes to get to that level of wealth. People don't understand how much a billion is. Like, I'm not saying every rich person in the world is a bad person. If you have 10 million in the bank, you are rich, right? That is considered rich for me. But you can do that just being savvy with money or running a good business. You can still be a good person. But A billion is a different story. And you've got David Beckham. He's been meeting up with like the World Economic Forum, for example. Like I know he comes across as quite likable when you hear him talk, but nah, I'm not buying that this is a good guy anymore. Like he was like so desperate to get a knighthood as well, which if you don't know in England, that means that your name gets changed to from Mr. David Beckham to Sir David Beckham. You get like some ceremony with the royal, like the King or Queen of England. But again, that's just another image thing, really, to be like, oh, look how good I am. I've done something great. Yeah, they're just obsessed with their brand and their image. This desire for so much wealth and power doesn't stem from a good place, in my opinion. I don't think it ever does. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on the whole Beckham situation. Let me know in the comments what you think. This topic did pique my interest, so I did want to make a video. I know I put a public post out saying that I was just going to do tier lists on this channel, and then I've just scrapped that after like two underperforming videos. So I don't know. I'm just going to keep mixing my content up, just see what I want to make. But I hope you enjoyed the video anyway. I would really appreciate if you hit a like on the video, help support it if you did enjoy and you're still watching up to this point, and subscribe if you haven't already. So yeah, I talk about some trending topics, do tier lists, stuff like that. So yeah, check out my videos. And yeah, thanks for watching today, and I'll see you in the next one.